You are about to listen to my conversation with Tim Moore, who is the principal at Bloomington High School in Bloomington, Illinois. We talked about a ton in this episode, from Tim's childhood and his journey to becoming a principal, to the struggles that many students at BHS face, and the changing culture and future goals for this school. All this, of course, and much, much more. If you enjoy this show and you want to show your support for it, I ask that you please click that share button beneath this video on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube also, like this page on Facebook, follow it on Instagram, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you would like to directly contribute to the show's improvement and production, I would love for you to become a patron on patreon.com/Paul Garcia, where you'll get early access to each and every episode, as well as some exclusive content for as little as $1 a month. You can also make one-time donations on the Venmo app to The Paul Garcia Show. I'd like to take this chance to thank my current beloved patrons, John the Hebrew Hammer Traub, my good friend Josh Harkey, Greg Sullins, the Metcalfs, Jared Walter, Zach B., Henry Steffen, Shaquille Oatmeal, Alyssa Ricketts, Miranda Noyes, Parker Shilson, Ben Boom Shakalaka Traub, Ann, and Donnie Bounds. Today's sponsors are Kelly Gerber, a trusted real estate agent in Central Illinois, Marchelloni's Pizza in Fairbury, Forest Edge Tree Service in Livingston County, Fairbury Furniture in Fairbury, and Tri-County Carpet and Flooring, also in Fairbury. Now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Bloomington High School Principal Tim Moore. Hello and welcome to the Paul Garcia Show, a show about the remarkable people of Central Illinois. I'm your host, Paul Garcia, and I invite you to join me as I speak with these individuals about their stories, the lessons they've learned, and the knowledge they've gained along the way. Tune in every Sunday to witness the power of bringing each new individual's unique journey into the spotlight. Where did you get the inspiration to even go into education in the first place?
Yeah, I attended Eastern Illinois University, played football there, and I knew all along. At first I was an accounting major, and then I figured out pretty quick, well, I'm not super good at math, so I probably shouldn't do that. Then I changed my major to econ, and going into my junior year, I started getting nervous because I was like, what am I going to do with this econ degree? And I had no idea when I graduated, what I was going to do. And so all along I wanted to teach and coach. And so finally going into my junior year, I made the decision of changing my major over to education, which it was the greatest decision I ever made, but I was in school a little bit longer because I pretty much had to start over. I mean, I didn't have any education classes.
Right.
Had a really awesome counselor at Eastern that really helped me kind of map out my plan. And so I changed my major and finished up school at Eastern and worked at Champaign Central for 2 years. Actually did my student teaching in Decatur, Illinois, and then worked at Champaign Central for a couple of years and then got to Bloomington. But all along, I knew I wanted to teach and coach. I had no idea that I would be a principal and I would become an administrator. I didn't go into education to do that. I really wanted to be a teacher and a head basketball coach is kind of what my goal was. And once I got to Bloomington and started taking classes at ISU, I started seeing some more opportunities that may open up for me in administration. And that's kind of how I got here. But it was not an easy road. I mean, to change my major at that point in my college career, it was absolutely not an easy road to get to where I'm at. So I'm very proud of myself for sticking with it. I've had a lot of support along the way. And I use that with kids all the time about, my path to get here was not easy. They may think it was, but it absolutely was not an easy path to get to where I'm at in my life and professionally and personally.
So I do want to talk in depth about what that journey specifically was like, the difficulties you faced. But before we get into that, let's go in chronological order. And I'm very curious, what led to you finding the education world attractive in college? Why did you even go that route in the first place? You were in econ. Why'd you make the switch?
Well, it really came down to me wanting to coach. Like I knew I wasn't going to the NFL. I was like, that's not going to happen. I really wanted to coach. I all along I knew that there was a part of me that wanted to work with young people. I really went into, quite honestly, as a way for me to coach. And so once I changed my major, and I really met with, like I say, a counselor at Eastern, Warren Kistner, who actually works at Illinois Wesleyan now. met with him, and he laid out my here's the classes you need to take. Then it became in my mind, okay, it's going to take me a little bit longer to get my degree, but I know that once I get it, I'll get a job. So it just really started with my desire to work with young people, but I really wanted to coach. I love sports. I grew up playing sports. I'm from Indiana originally, so I'm a Hoosier basketball player. So that's kind of what my initial goal was to coach basketball.
Okay.
And teach.
So you mentioned that you're not going to the NFL. You realized that in college, but you said it like it's an obvious thing. I feel like that was a real dream of yours because you're a big guy, and it's apparent that you're passionate about sports. Yeah. So was that when did you realize that you probably shouldn't pursue a professional football career? I don't know if you were into basketball as well, but when did you realize that you maybe shouldn't pursue that dream? And did that hurt at all?
It's a great question. I had a couple scouts from Washington Redskins, Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, wow.
There was one other team who came and watched me practice my senior year. So I knew that I had there was a chance that I might get drafted. I didn't get invited to any workouts. I didn't get invited to the combine. So I started, once the season was over, I figured out that I hadn't heard from any other teams, and with that chance of making it, probably wasn't going to work out. Now, I could have continued to work out. I could have continued to pursue that dream, but it was pretty real to me in my mind that, okay, that's a path that if I'm going to go down, I don't have the money to do that. I needed to get a job. I needed to get to college. I needed to graduate from college. And so it really didn't hurt. I mean, there's times I look back on it and I talk to my son, both my kids about, man, if I had done some things different in college, maybe things could have worked out in a different way. Maybe I would have made it to the NFL. Now, I don't have any regrets that I'm not there. They make a lot of money. That'd be kind of cool, right? But I love what I'm doing, and I'm happy where I landed. But it didn't hurt. I just, it's one of those things. It's a lesson that I share with people, like I say, in particular my two kids, about you don't want any regrets. Like, you don't want to look back. I'm 51 years old now and look back and say, man, when I was 19 or 20, if I had done some things differently, who knows how things would have turned out. I think we all have that in life where you look back, if I could have done some things differently. But at the time, once I realized my playing days were over, I wasn't too disappointed. I felt like I had a really good high school career, had a really good college career at Eastern, and got opportunities to do things that, got a free education basically that I would not have gotten if it were not for my, playing football.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Really quick, don't mind me. I'm going to turn this on. I didn't realize I turned it on.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay.
You'll learn about me. I'm a sweater, man. So
that's
why I bring this with me all the time anyway. So.
You have no idea. I am a sweater. I have to, I'll be honest, be a little vulnerable here. I had to get it's like a makeup thing that's supposed to like put a dry thing on your face because I will shine to the point that it's distracting on this show. So
it's all good, man. I go everywhere with something like this because I sweat like crazy. So it's good, man.
I need to start doing that. But okay, so really quick, I want to talk briefly about sports because you had a real shot to at least play at a high level of football. And you had goals and legitimate aspirations to play professional football. Right. Do you think that a lot of kids are maybe ill-advised in going and shooting for such a goal like that? Because let's be honest, less than 1/10 of 1% of kids in high school are ever going to play professional sports. Of course, in the black communities, that is an extremely popular goal for a lot of kids.
Sure.
And the vast majority are going to get heartbroken at some point in time when they realize they can't play at that level. So what do you think about that? Are these kids, is it okay for kids to have those goals and maybe to pursue them? Or would you think to maybe do something else there?
Well, I think there's two parts to it for me. I think it's okay for kids to pursue that goal. I want to be in the NBA. I want to be in Major League Baseball. I want to be a professional football player. I think it's okay to pursue that. I think you got to have a backup plan though, because like you said, the percentage of athletes who make it to the professional level is extremely low. Mm-hmm. I think you have to be extremely talented. You have to be lucky in terms of health. So I think it's okay for kids to pursue that goal, but I also talk to kids all the time about you got to have a backup plan because the chances of you making it to the NFL or making it to the NBA, not to say you can't do that, is pretty slim, and I think that, kids see that, hear kids all the time say, I'm going to be a professional athlete. And I don't know if they really understand what goes into being a professional athlete. and the sacrifices you have to make as a young person and how talented you have to be. I mean, those guys in the major leagues or whatever, professional football, are crazy athletic, talented, gifted people. And again, it's not to say that, young people can't get to that point, but I just think that pursuing that goal or that dream is okay, but you've got to have a backup plan, because at some point in time, you won't be able to play basketball anymore. You won't be able to play football anymore. So at some point in time, you've got to be able to have something to fall back on.
Right. I actually just spoke to a Catholic priest who quit professional soccer at the height of his career at 25 to become a priest. And one of the things he said was, he gives talks to kids all the time about this subject. He says, who are you going to be when you take off the jersey? Because you will take off the jersey for the last time sooner than you think.
Absolutely.
And a lot of kids' identities are wrapped up in their sports. I can think back to wrestling. I wasn't even that great of a wrestler, but my identity was in wrestling.
Absolutely.
So when that sport is no longer your ally, meaning that you can't do it at the level that you once could, it's heartbreaking. You can have an identity crisis a lot of the time, I feel.
You can, and that's why I think that having that balance is really important, and that's easier for some kids and harder for others to understand that, because as you said, their identity is so much about athletics. But at some point in time, everybody's career ends, whether it's high school, college, professionally. At some point in time, you can't play those sports anymore.
Right. And you mentioned that you went into the education field to primarily maybe, to become a coach. Do you have to have an education degree to go into coaching, or?
No, you don't have to. I mean, you can. We've got coaches right now that are non-teachers who are head coaches, but in order to be, I wanted to be a teacher also, so that was going to be my route. But no, we've got coaches at our school right now that don't teach. They work at State Farm or other places, and they also coach for us as well. Okay,
that makes sense.
So it's not a requirement to have that. It just, if you want to teach and be in the building, obviously you have to be certified to do that.
So back to your journey to becoming a principal, what was your first line of work in the education field? And then kind of take me through the steps that you took to becoming what you are today.
Yeah, so I did my student teaching at Stephen Decatur High School. I was a business teacher. Once I graduated mid-year. So I graduated in December. I was living here at the time with my wife that spring, after I finished my student teaching and graduated from Eastern, I started substitute teaching at Bloomington High School, actually. So I was a substitute teacher for them during that spring year, and just went in every day. They actually called me almost every day to come in and sub, and so it gave me a chance to get some really good experience. And then that following fall, I got a job at Champaign Central High School. And so I was a business teacher at Central High School. I also was the freshman football varsity assistant coach for football, and then I helped with basketball as well. So I did that for 2 years, just teaching and coaching, and got married during that time, and then had to move here to Bloomington. I say had to because it's a story. When I go to ISU sometime to talk to future teachers, I tell the story about my wife was driving to and from. She was working at State Farm, and she was driving from Champaign every day. And one of the first snowstorms we had, after we got married, she's driving over here. She called me in a panic. She had an accident. Well, by the time she got back home to Champaign that night, safely, of course, and she tells me the story. It really wasn't an accident. She's driving down 74, coming here. It's freezing rain in front. Freezing rain starts to come down. She panics and pulls her car into a ditch. So she created her own accident. But at that point, I knew, okay, I got to move to Bloomington because I can't have my wife going back and forth. So a job opened up at Bloomington High School, and I started teaching. I was a business teacher for 3 years at BHS. I was a head freshman football coach for 3 of those years, and was slated to start working with the basketball program. Because my first 2 years, I didn't coach basketball at all. I started coaching my 3rd year. I was a head freshman basketball coach, and then got an opportunity to go into administration, and never looked back. I do miss the coaching part of it, but yeah, I was a business teacher and a coach, and as I said, I always joke. John Zabel was a longtime athletic director at Bloomington High School, a really good friend of mine, and I interviewed for the head basketball job years ago, and he didn't hire me. Said I didn't have enough experience, and I joke with him all the time, like if he had hired me as a head basketball coach, then I may still be doing that because I really love sports. Right. I really love basketball, and but things happen for a reason, and I didn't get hired then, and then I was a colleague of his a few years later as an administrator.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Right. Things happen for a reason.
They do. Absolutely.
We are brought to you by Tri-County Carpet and Flooring Sales and Installation in Fairbury, Illinois. Tri-County Carpet and Flooring in Fairbury is the premier flooring store throughout Livingston, McLean, and Ford counties. From choosing the perfect flooring to measuring and installation, Tri-County ensures top quality products and services. Their trained professionals boast precise measurements, straight cuts, and perfect fits, while their showroom houses a multitude of gorgeous, top-quality, name-brand carpet and flooring options in the latest styles and colors that are durable and long-lasting. With free estimates, design consultation, and contractor and multi-room discounts, Tri-County in Fairbury is your one-stop shop for all of your home and business flooring needs. Pay them a visit at 19 Jan Lane in Fairbury, Illinois, right off of Route 24, and give them a call at 815-692-3666.
Tri-County Carpet, your flooring paradise.
I'm willing to bet that you're still passionate about sports. Oh, it's obvious you are.
I am.
Do you try to make it to all the football games that you can? And
I've been very fortunate. Both of my kids went to Bloomington High School, and so yes, I obviously went and watched them play. I still go to all the games. I go to most of the football games and basketball games because of my other kids' events. My own two kids. Sometimes I would miss events that I couldn't go to because I would go watch them compete. But I'm going to try to go, I need to do a better job, I think, actually, of going to see volleyball and tennis and watching some of those events. And now that my own kids are gone out of the house and me and my wife are what they call empty nesters, I'll have an opportunity to do some of those things. But I try to go to as many sporting events as I can. I mean, I love watching sports. I love seeing our kids compete. So it's one of those things that I've gone to a lot of, over my time as administrator, I have gone to a lot of basketball and football and sporting events, and it's just one of those things. When I look back on my career, it's like I wish I had been keeping track of how many different events I've gone to over the years.
Yeah. Now this might be totally wrong, and I stumbled across this in my research. Did your son recently sign with a pretty good football program or something?
Well, my oldest son, Griffin's is at University of Illinois.
Okay.
So he's a tight end there. He's a junior. He's a redshirt sophomore this year, so it's his third year.
Okay.
So he's at U of I playing football there.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool watching him grow up playing football, and also he played football, basketball, and baseball, and had an opportunity to get a scholarship to Illinois, and he's over there playing right now. And a lot of people don't realize that Lovie Smith was the head coach there at the time at Illinois that recruited Griffin. And when he offered Griffin a scholarship, he did it in my office. Illinois called and said, "Hey, we want to come by, and Coach Smith is going to be driving through Bloomington. He wants to stop by and see Griffin. Can he come by?" Sure. So he came in my office. We got Griffin out of class, and we were just sitting there talking. And Coach Smith says, "Hey, Griffin, when you graduate, we got a scholarship for you." And it's just kind of a surreal moment. I mean, Lovie Smith's this Hall of Fame coach, right, with the Bears, and it just was kind of a surreal moment, man. And that was his first scholarship offer, actually, and so we were super excited. And people don't realize this, but when he was younger, we had his room decorated in Illinois colors. And it wasn't like we said, that's the school you're going to go to, but he said, his goal all along was to play football there. So very proud of him, man. He as I said, he's a junior there, and, fighting for playing time, and, but he's learning some lessons there I think will bode him well in life for sure.
Man, talk about parenting moments that you will never forget.
Never forget.
That had to be awesome.
It was awesome. And actually, he still talks about it. He still says, I'll never forget that day when Coach Smith came to your office and talked to us. It's just something, I'll never forget that. It was pretty cool. Very cool moment.
Yep, that's going to be one of those stories that a grandpa tells his grandchildren 100 times.
Yeah, absolutely. Very proud moment for us, for sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when people think of Bloomington High School, well, let me think actually. You look back at the last decade. I went to Prairie Central High School. Okay. We weren't in the same conference as Bloomington, but we came to Bloomington all the time for wrestling tournaments and things like that. For people who have been at least associated with Bloomington in some way for the past decade or so, you've undoubtedly noticed this change, this improvement in the school, both culturally as well as structurally. Structurally in the football field that is just glorious.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when that happened, but it was somewhat recently. And then also a whole fine arts building that's pretty state of the art.
Absolutely.
And then also, I would say that the culture at Bloomington High School there's a little more school pride. And I haven't dove deep into it, but from what I've seen, there seems like there's more school pride. There's a little more something. So do you agree with what I just said? And if you do, why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. We have, as a district, worked super hard to improve our facilities. So starting with that, if you drive past our campus, there's not too many high schools that look like our school. I don't say that bragging. I say that just very proud of how it looks.
Oh, yeah.
Our campus, it's always clean. If you come in our school today, you come into our school 2 weeks from now, a month from now, it will look clean every single day you walk in there. So there's a lot of pride in that, in the facilities itself and taking good care of them. Our football field, athletic complex looks the way it does. You're right. We added a band room, fine arts, wing addition to our school. So structurally, and we have remodeled pretty much our whole school from inside out. That started probably, I want to say probably 14, 15 years ago. We started this project of just slowly remodeling Bloomington High School. And so there's a lot of some structural changes, which I think our kids are proud of the way our school look, and they actually take pretty good care of it. And so that's the first thing. And then the other part we've done is we've worked really hard on establishing really good relationships with our kids. And so that helps create this culture where kids want to be there. It's not perfect. We have days when things we can do better. But I think overall, if you were to come and walk into our school and just stand and observe, for a school as diverse as ours, you don't see the different cliques, this group of kids here, that group of kids there. Naturally, there are kids that kind of hang out together that may be of the same race, from the same background, but we're very fortunate that we don't have those cliques that exist in some schools of our size. And part of it's because of the positive culture that we've really worked hard to create at Bloomington High School. And, we tell people all the time, like when I see something, whether good or bad, it's like, hey, you're a Bloomington Raider, and that's not how you're supposed to act. And our staff talks about that to kids. We really emphasize taking pride in being a Bloomington Raider, taking pride of going to school here. And I think that just that constant message helps. And then the other part is, in this community, there are so many proud alumni of our school, and you see it we have a tradition on, like most schools, on Friday, we're purple and gold. And so just being out in the community and seeing, alumni or parents of students wearing purple and gold, that's how that school pride just kind of carries itself. And I'll be honest, we when I first started at Bloomington High School, it was known as the nickname was the ghetto school.
Right. I'm glad you said that, because that's when I think back to when I was a really little kid, that was the stigma surrounding Bloomington High School. And
it's one of those things that, like, I remember Dr. Nilsson was our previous superintendent when he first started, and I don't even remember. I remember we had a chain link fence around our athletic complex. It's a white fence you see now, and it had not the actual barbed wire on it, but it had the post that the barbed wire was on at the top of the fence. Crazy. So his first thing, I'll never forget him telling the story, was take that down. That just sends a message that your school's, what kind of, is this a prison yard? It's not a school. So that was kind of the start of really starting to redo the culture or the structure of our school and how it looked. But I laugh when people say it's the ghetto school, and I'll tell you how we approach that, Paul. We think that we take that on as a challenge. And I tell our kids all the time, if I see two kids, for example, doing something in the community, or they've done something, I talk to them, say, look, or our staff does, when people expect you to act a certain way, because you go to Bloomington High School, and you got a Bloomington High School sweatshirt on, and there's a stigma that they don't even realize. Our kids nowadays have no idea that stigma, or that was a title we had of the ghetto school, even exists. And we take a lot of pride in dispelling that rumor and proving people wrong. We do it by, and I say we do it by how our campus looks, by our actions, how we carry ourselves, and how we do things. And that's why I think it's important that we staff and students do things right all the time. Not that we're perfect, because there's always people out there who think that our school is a certain way, and it's so far from being this school with all these bad kids in it, and they're tearing our school up. I mean, we're so far from that. Now, we have had some challenging students go through Bloomington High School.
Oh, I'm
Every
sure,
school has.
yeah.
But that perception that people have of our school is so far from the truth. I'll tell you a quick story.
We are brought to you by Kelly Gerber, a trusted real estate agent in Central Illinois. Do you need a trusted real estate professional to assist you in navigating through the buying or selling process? If you do, remember one name, Kelly Gerber. Kelly is a phenomenal real estate agent for Keeley Real Estate in Fairbury, Illinois. If you're selling, she has premier marketing strategies implemented to assure that your home is circulated to buyers throughout Illinois. If you're buying, she has professional relationships with lenders, title companies, inspectors, and attorneys to alleviate the stress that comes with buying a home. Whether buying or selling, Kelly works hard to ensure that the real estate process is enjoyable and stress-free. It's a seller's market, so the time to call is now. Call Kelly up at 217-390-8205 or send her an email at kelly@keeleyrealestate.com to begin your real estate journey today. Member of Mid-Illinois Realtors Association, Illinois Board of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors.
I'll tell you a quick story. When I was living in Champaign and came over here to meet with a realtor, don't even remember her name at the time. My wife was working at State Farm. She set me up to come over here and spend the day with this realtor looking at houses for us to move into. And the realtor initially didn't even ask what I did, right? She knew my wife worked at State Farm. I think maybe she assumed maybe I did. We're going around looking at houses, and she's showing me all houses in Unit 5, right?
Unit 5, just to clarify.
Which is normal school district. So Normal West, Normal Community, that's a separate school district than District 87, okay? And after about an hour with her, we probably looked at 2 or 3 houses. She said, hey, so what do you, and during this time, before she asked me what I did, she was making some certain comments about District 87. It's got really bad schools. They got really bad kids. It's not, the houses in the area in the district aren't, the best, so on and so forth. She finally said, so what do you do? And I said, I'll be working at Bloomington High School. Then she tried to backtrack. At that point, it was too late. So we didn't work with her anymore. But it's just one of those things. That's part of that perception that people have of our school and of our district that we've worked really hard as a school in a district to overcome and prove people wrong. Our school is so far away from this ghetto school that we once had a tag of.
Right. It is. And I think it's fascinating, knowing your sports background, how you now then approach issues like changing the stigma at Bloomington High School with the same competitive drive,
Absolutely.
like the same energy of a high-level athlete. Mm-hmm. It's cool, and that's how you should. That's the beauty of sports, in my opinion. It really shapes how we approach life and approach challenges, overcome challenges. It's like you almost get motivated when things are rough and you have a challenge in front of you. Yeah. What a great characteristic to have, I would say. I
would totally agree, and I think that, as I said, it's just one of those things where we try to drive to our kids, and again, these students don't understand it because they're so young. They had no idea what the work that we have done at our school the last 20 or 25 years, quite honestly, to put us in a position to be where we're at. Like I said, the way our campus looks, and then how the school culture is that exists at BHS right now.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to any organization, any high school, it takes a long time to change the culture in the public's eye, because there are many more people, probably even in the area, that went to Bloomington High School than that do go to Bloomington High School. Mm-hmm. The alumni far outweigh the students that are actually there. Yep. So there could be a lot of people that remember what Bloomington High School was in a negative light, and that's just going to take time. It's going to take until the kids that you've worked with that have been in the new Bloomington High School to become like distant alumni, I would feel, before the public's perception of Bloomington High School truly changes. Yeah. And I've been there a few times my girlfriend was a competitive swimmer, and I would drop her off there, and I was just like, this place is beautiful. And I was still subconsciously aware of the stigma surrounding Bloomington High School. I was like, I've never said a ghetto school, but I could see how someone would say exactly that. And I'm like, this doesn't match up.
Not at all.
It was like almost uncomfortable. It's like, what happened here?
And that's a great way to say it. It doesn't match when you hear that people have that perception about our school. and then they come to see our school, see it, just drive past it, and then you come into the school, and it's not like that whatsoever. So it's just one of those things. It's been a continuous journey, I guess, to prove people wrong. It's something that we take a lot of pride. Our staff takes a lot of pride in what we do with our students, and I tell our staff, just continue to be a champion for our school, continue to advocate for our school. When you hear people in the public, in your own circles, say things about our school, share with them all the good things we're doing, because we're doing a lot of good things for our kids, and we know that, but sometimes that's not what people hear out in the public.
And you talk about the structural changes you made. It's important to have nice facilities when able. It's a lot like, I take a lot of pride in, and I know I'm not dressed nearly as well as you are, but when you dress well, it shows the person that you're communicating with that you respect them. Yeah. That's why realtors a lot of the time, I don't know about the realtor you worked with originally, but they dress up. Like, it shows respect for the person. And when you decide as a school board to spend money on getting nice new facilities, a nice new band room, and a good football field, it shows the students like, hey, we respect you. Absolutely. And then that can make the students kind of stand up taller, take a little more pride in what they do and in being from Bloomington High School.
Yeah. I've had multiple schools, coaches, administrators, when they come to our school, just rave about our facilities. Like, even going into our gym, our main basketball gym we play in is architecturally looks pretty cool from the outside. It's been recognized from an architectural standpoint. And then just the environment inside. I mean, it's just one of those things where there's so many good things about our school that, again, the general public doesn't always see and hear, but those that are within the school knows that it's a really good place to be. And again, but it has not, it's taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of support from a lot of different people to kind of put us in this position. And hopefully we can carry forward, just continue to move forward, with our school.
So when it comes to the school environment from a cultural perspective, was there a game plan from when you first became principal, or maybe even before then, to change the culture within the student body? Because I now know people personally, families that have moved a decent distance to go to Bloomington High School because of this culture that we're speaking about. So how did you initiate the plan of action to change the culture? Okay. How do you go about doing that at a school?
Well, that's a really good question. So one of the things that's super important to me are people. And so when I first started as principal, I felt like our administrative team really needed to focus on building positive relationships with our staff. Not that we didn't have it, but we needed to get better at it. But then I also talked to our staff about the importance of relationships with kids, relationships with families, because that's how I think you build a positive culture. If you think about a family, your personal family, if they're super close, there are really good relationships between parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles. And so what we've tried to do at BHS is to really emphasize positive relationships. I tell people all the time, like, if you think back to your favorite teacher, your favorite coach, everybody has one. Now, we've got some that maybe we're not our favorite, but focus on those that are favorite coaches, our favorite teachers. I'm willing to bet there was a positive relationship there. I can tell you right now, the people in my life, that educators that I knew or worked with, that have absolutely influenced my life, and there was a positive relationship there. So the plan, it never was like a blueprint. Okay, we're going to do this, and over time we want to get to this benchmark, because there's really no benchmark for how the positive culture in your building. There's no measurables you can have. But what I say is, I tell people all the time, come into our school and just observe and watch. Spend some time in our school and talk to some of our kids, and you'll start to understand this positive culture that exists. And it's come with just a constant effort, a constant thought process of the importance of relationships.
Okay, how does a teacher or whoever it is, how do they go about actually improving their relationships with their students? Are there specific things that they make an effort to do more of, or to do a better job of?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some things they can do. So I think it starts with showing your kids, show your kids that you care. I know that's kind of cliche-ish, but it's one of those things where, like, I tell our teachers, particularly our new teachers, our older experienced teachers, they get it,
right?
For the most part. get to know your students. Take the time every single day to get to know your students. Even if it's greeting them at the door as they walk in, if it's if they play a particular sport, or if they're in the drama club and they're performing, go watch them. But those are things that you can do to show that you care by just getting to know your students. I also think that teachers can, if they say they're going to do something, do it. Kids pick up on that, if you say you're going to come to this game, or you say you're going to meet me after school, you should do that. So that's how you build trust with kids, and that's how you enhance that relationship. And then being fair with them. Fair is not equal, so we don't treat every kid the same at Bloomington High School. Mm-hmm. But man, just be fair to kids. And what dealing with this pandemic the last year and a half, it's taught us even more the importance of relationships with kids, because they haven't been in school,
right?
Right. So it's one of those things where teachers can just do their everyday actions with students. We've got a teacher, history teacher, probably one of the top 2 or 3 educators I've ever worked with, ever been around. Kids love him. Families love this guy. And he's the kind of guy, I'm walking down the hallway the other day. He's talking to a student. And he says, "Hey, Mr. Moore, do you know this student?" And I said, "No, I don't." So he introduces her to me. And he says, "She's a rock star. You need to get to know her." And he walks away, right? So me and this young lady are both walking up the stairs together. And she said to me, Mr. Filarski's so nice. And now she's a junior. He had her as a freshman. So just that's the kind of thing that a lot of our teachers do, where it's like talking to kids, encouraging them, that go a long way when it comes to building relationships with kids.
We are brought to you by Forest Edge Tree Service. If you have trees or tree stumps on your property that you want gone, go nowhere else but Livingston County's premier tree service provider, Forest Edge Tree Service. Your yard is no place for looming, dead, or damaged trees, because it's just a matter of time before they come down, ruining your property, ruining your week, and ruining your bank account. This is exactly why you need to be a responsible adult and hire the services of Forest Edge Tree Service. Simply give Joe Rudin a call or text at 815-615-3037 to get a free quote today. Keep your family, pets, vehicles, and neighbors safe, and save yourself from a world of headaches when you call or text Forest Edge Tree Service to get those dangerous, looming, troublesome trees off of your property. That's Forest Edge Tree Service, Livingston County's premier tree service provider. You said things when it comes to you're developing that relationship with your students that might seem obvious to some listeners. However, you said they were cliche, but they absolutely bear saying, because although these seem like things that would be obvious if you're trying to improve your relationship, a lot of teachers do not do it. I can think back to some teachers that when I walked in, not once would they look up. Yeah. They wouldn't look up until like the bell rang and it was time to start teaching. Yeah. And maybe that they didn't know you by your name, and I mean, that's very important. The things you said are great tips to developing those relationships.
I think there's this, I think we assume that because someone is a teacher, that they fully understand relationships and how to connect with kids. And not all teachers are comfortable doing that, quite honestly. Some teachers are just naturally introverted, and so it's hard for them to step outside of their comfort zone. And so I think we assume that because everyone is a teacher, or all teachers have that as a skill set, but they don't. And some teachers really struggle with that part of the teaching. But that's the most important part, is that relationship, for sure.
Can you remember a time or a student that really benefited from a solid relationship with a teacher? Because I know friends that had one good relationship with a teacher. Like maybe they were like the outcast type of kid, and they had one solid relationship, and they've said that a teacher, because of that relationship, it saved them without putting it too gruesomely.
Yeah, sure. Man, there's we had a student that had some pretty significant health issues when she was in high school. I think she had a brain tumor, maybe. And
holy cow!
Yeah, she was living on her own.
Oh my gosh!
She had a kid while she was in high school, and our nurse. A lot of teachers looked out for this kid,
right?
But our nurse went above and beyond to help her, to support her. And our nurse, she since has retired, but I I remember this young lady coming back to school. She's a nursing student now.
Of course
so she
is,
came
yeah.
back and visited us, man, and I can't tell you how cool it was and just how good I felt inside that our school helped her get to where she was at, number one. But number two, this kid didn't quit, because it could have been easy for her with her own health issues, with being a single mom, a teenage mom, not a single mom, a teenage mom, and trying to navigate high school. And now she's a nurse. I mean, it's one that I'll never forget. And every time I see her, it just makes me feel good inside that, again, this young lady didn't quit on herself, but our school absolutely had an impact on her getting to where she's at, for sure.
Man. Okay, that's a great story.
Yeah,
great example
good.
there.
It's good, yeah.
So you briefly mentioned earlier that your school, and anyone who just enters the school will quickly notice it's very diverse, both ethnically and economically,
Absolutely.
actually. Why is that a good thing? Apparently that is a very good thing, but maybe you can explain why exactly that is.
Well, if you look at our society, it's very diverse, both ethnicity, both financially. So I think our school teaches kids how to navigate life, this real world that they're going to be stepping into or that they're part of. So having a school that's culturally diverse is really important to me. I wanted my kids to be in a school like that. I love working in a school that's super diverse. It gives us a chance to get to know other cultures and other people. It teaches kids to learn to work with, become friends with people from different backgrounds. And same way with those that have money and those that don't. You know, it's one of those things where it's like the financial, we've got kids, I always say, we got kids who parents are members at Bloomington Country Club right across the street from our school. We've got kids that are homeless. So there's a wide diversity.
Do you really have kids that are homeless?
Oh, for sure. Well, they're considered homeless, and by that, it's a pretty broad definition. But if you got a kid that's not living with their legal guardian, with their family, they could be considered homeless. So we got kids that stay at Home Sweet Home Missions. Though we've had families staying there before, so we absolutely have kids that are homeless, that don't have a lot of the basic things that their classmates have. And so as a school, we try to compensate. Compensate's not the right word. We do everything we can to help those students, provide clothes for them, provide food for them. Is anything we can do to help those kids while they're at school and outside of school, we take that on and do it. So the diversity, back to your question, though, I think it just teaches kids how to navigate this world that we live in that is becoming more and more diverse in so many different ways. And our school represents that. And I just think it's when you walk in our school, I would tell you that at 11 o'clock, if you came to our cafeteria, it's pretty loud, first of all, because there's 500 kids eating. But you just look out there and you see kids of all different races and backgrounds sitting together, having lunch, talking, laughing. And it's just a really, really cool thing to see.
That is amazing. Well, okay, first of all, I was taken off guard. I didn't realize that you would have students that were homeless.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've actually spoken to the main manager of Home Sweet Home Ministries, so I know all about that.
Yep.
That's incredible. You guys really do go above and beyond for your students. I've never heard of such a thing like that.
Yeah, we've got teachers that started a weekend food program a couple years ago. So every Friday, COVID slowed it down a little bit, but every Friday, kids could come down at the end of the day and get food for the weekend for their families. And that came because we had teachers that recognized, hey, we got a lot of kids that depend on our school for food, and then they go on the weekends and their family doesn't have food for them. So we partnered with Midwest Food Bank and have a great weekend. It's called a weekend food program. We give kids food to take home on the weekends, and just again that's earlier you're talking about the culture and climate of our building. That's how another way you create this positive culture is where kids know they can come to our school. They're going to be safe. It's going to be warm or cool depending on the weather. And they're going to be taken care of, and we're going to provide anything they need. We're going to do everything we can to get it for them. That's how I think you can change the culture you're building in a positive way, is by providing that.
And something I think is interesting talking about diversity, and I only just now realized this, when I look at other schools, more rural schools a lot of the time that are way less diverse, I notice a phenomenon where kids, because they're not exposed to all different walks of life, different ethnicities, different religions, different kinds of people altogether, they have a lot less tolerance. And I better watch what I say here so I don't say something I don't mean. But no, there's more. To put it bluntly, I hear a lot more making fun of vast groups of people that are simply not at that school. There's more racist jokes.
Sure.
There's more just different ways of being intolerable. No, not intolerable. You know what I'm trying to say. They just don't know about these different groups of people that make up a large chunk of society, and they'll make fun of them. They won't understand them. They'll be freaked out by these new ideas. So I think that immersing yourself in a more diverse school would probably better equip you to enter the world of business and the world of work, where you're going to be thrown into these melting pots.
Absolutely. Yeah, my wife is white. All right, and I say that I sound like I said it proud. My wife's white. It's not what I mean. But here's where I'm going with this, though. My two sons are biracial kids. My wife's from Effingham, Illinois. There's not a lot of diversity in Effingham, Illinois. Mm-hmm. So in our relationship over the years, I've had an opportunity, and she's got a huge family. I've had an opportunity to be around her family, and they've learned a lot of. I don't doubt for 1 minute that they had stereotypes of Angie Kinkler at the time bringing home this black man that she was dating, and they had certain stereotypes or perceptions about people of color. And I hope that over time of interacting with me, interacting with our two kids, they've learned to be different people and be better people. Because I know I've learned some things from them as well, And so I say all that because I do think that being in a diverse setting absolutely gives you an opportunity to be more learn tolerance, and be more accepting of people. And if the school culture itself promotes that, and we love our diversity, we brag about it. We're one of the most diverse school districts in the state of Illinois. That's something we're proud of. And so we take any student, we don't care where you're from, and that because of that, I think it gives us this school environment that is extremely positive and extremely welcoming to all families. Yes,
and it's funny because I'll go to Bloomington more than any other school, like you said, and I'll see these groups of kids walking out that are just, totally mixed up. Yeah. There's black kids, Latino kids.
Absolutely.
I don't normally say Latino. That's the first time I said that. Hispanic kids, whatever,
right, yeah.
And white kids, and it's just totally mixed up. And the kids, as you said, you learn this tolerance. And the kids, of course, they learn that. There's not an ounce of racism or anything else in their body. And if you go to these more rural places, I think Effingham's a pretty rural place, right?
Yes, it is.
You don't quite see it at the same level at all, which is sad. And, you're making me think about my own life here because I always felt growing up in a rural school, I never noticed it. Like, I was like, I couldn't care less about different ethnicities hanging out together. And I think that might be because my dad is a full Mexican. And my mom was like pale Irish white. And so I grew up with that. I'm like, that's normal for two different ethnicities to be together.
Absolutely is.
And I apologize. It's like you're making me look back at my own life here. But anyway, so diversity is good. Super it's something important. You're proud of.
Very proud of. Very proud of. And our school is it's one of those things where the diversity, I think, just helps kids have a chance to better understand other people outside of their own family. And I think that's important.
Right. We are brought to you by Marchelloni's Pizza in Fairbury, Illinois. Studies show that pizza from Marchelloni's Pizza in Fairbury is the tastiest pizza to those of us with a properly functioning brain and taste buds. Don't fight the science. Pizza from Marchelloni's Pizza in Fairbury is spectacular, and not only that, but they also offer a daily happy hour. So if you call between 4 and 5 p.m. and order a pizza, you get the second one of equal or lesser value for free. Restrictions apply. You can even call at 4:45 p.m., order your pizzas, and then pick them up at 8 p.m., and you will still get that happy hour discount. How sweet is that? For the most delicious pizzas around, head nowhere else but Marchelloni's Pizza in Fairbury, Illinois. Call them up and place your order today at 815-692-4602 and pick it up at 405 East Locust Street in Fairbury. So in terms of student success, from a student success standpoint, how has Bloomington High School been trending, we'll say, since you've become principal? Because just for clarification, when did you become the principal here?
So this is my 15th year as principal. It's my
Okay.
25th year at Bloomington High School.
So in terms of things like test scores, participation in extracurricular activities, things like that, how has Bloomington High School, the student body, been trending? Have they been getting better, or have you had a lot of difficulty?
Well, so there's a couple things there. So our test scores are there's an achievement gap at Bloomington High School. Our white students, our not low-income students outperform our minority students and our low-income students. Mm-hmm. There's an apparent gap there. It's been there as long as I've been there. Now, I don't say that, I'm not proud of that, but that's partly of having, of any school of our size, there's going to be an achievement gap, I can almost guarantee, between white and black, white and Hispanic, low-income, not low-income. So our test scores and things have changed at the state level in terms of the standardized tests that you have to take, and we've got a high percentage of students who go to Heartland. We've got a pretty good percentage, and I don't know off the top of my head, of students who go to four-year school. So I think when people look at test scores, that's one measurement of a school, and I say our test scores have been average. But we do have more students participating in clubs and activities. I think that's important.
Very important.
We've got, we start clubs all the time. Example: we had 3 years ago, a bread club. Kids that like to eat bread and talk about bread. Weirdest thing ever, but they wanted to do it, so we allowed them. So we have more opportunities for our kids to get involved, be it extracurriculars, be it sports, activities and things like that. It's one of those things where our test scores have really kind of our graduation rate has fluctuated. I mean, the state probably 7-8 years ago changed how the graduation rate was calculated. Mm-hmm. We went from always being over 90% graduation rate to 1 year we're like 72%, 73%. I was like, what's going on at Bloomington High School? Well, the state changed the formula and how it's calculated. Now we've been back up to around anywhere from 85 to 90%. And we can get better. I mean, there's things that we need to do more to support our students. But I think it's hard to compare for any school what was done 20 years ago to now, because things are so different. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a pandemic we're still navigating. But things are so different now, and kids are different. And I know people say, well, that shouldn't matter, but it does matter. Kids nowadays have way much more to deal with than I ever dealt with as a young person, probably as you dealt with as a young person. So it's one of those things where, I don't use test scores as the only thing and for a while, that's how schools were judged. It was like, are you making adequate yearly progress, AYP? If you're not, you're on this list of not making AYP. And that kind of fed into that stigma of Bloomington not being a very good school. Right. But we overcome that with other things. Academic achievement is super important at our school, and our teachers work extremely hard to educate our students. But I like I said, when I am done at Bloomington High School, I'll be more proud of the culture and climate that exists at our school than I ever will any test scores that, to look back and say we made AYP for 10 straight years. Well, that's great, but your school culture is not very good. Kids don't like coming to school. I'll take the culture and climate over anything else every day of the week.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could say as analogies to that. Well, first of all, Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life thinking it's an idiot, And so these kids that might be excellent in the fine arts, that might have fantastic communication skills, might not be able to pay attention or even care to pay attention in social studies or something like that. So it's important, I think, perhaps more important, maybe definitely more important for these kids to have a good perception of themselves, to be confident in their own skin, and to have friendship and great relationships, just like you said. While, of course, I know you strive for good test scores as well.
Absolutely.
I think that there are other things that are just as, if not more important, even mental health too, which can be improved from these relationships that you speak of.
We had a kid years ago, his name was Matt Curry. He's got his own band now. And if you were to talk to Matt, he'd probably tell you he did not like high school very much at all, because he knew he was going to pursue this dream of being a musician and starting his own band. And he struggled to get through high school. And it wasn't because he wasn't smart, but this kid was performing with his dad at the time as part of his own band. And so he missed school a lot. And I remember having a conversation with our assistant principal about him. Like, look, man, this kid, not that school's not important to him, but he's not planning on he's going to start his own band. He's a talented musician. And he did. He graduated from Bloomington High School. He's got his own band. He's performing. My point of saying all that is, like, I think while academic achievement is really important, I also think schools are obligated to help kids find that niche and then help them pursue their dreams as much as we can. Help them get through high school. Not everybody goes to college. And so helping kids figure out what they want to do and then helping them pursue that is another obligation we have as a school that I think sometimes gets lost, quite honestly.
I want to touch on something that is a little bit touchy, and that's, you said, the gaps between different ethnicities in test scores and success in school. One of the biggest predictors, and I know this personally, of how well you're going to perform in school and from an academic standpoint is, well, your parents. First of all, if you have two parents, that helps tremendously with how you're going to perform in school. And of course, you can look across different ethnicities. White families, the parents stay together. In the black community, it is they separate a lot more, or more so there's more single motherhood. And I believe the same is true in the Hispanic community. Do you ever talk about that? Do you think it's important in society that if you can, the parents stay together? That's a really loaded question, I understand, as I'm saying it. Do you ever talk about that, I guess, with students?
Well, it's not, so I don't really dive into, a student's family structure in terms of one single parent, two parents at home. I'm a product of a single mom, and I tell people she's as tough as they came, and right. Me and my brothers are very lucky to have that. So I think that it's one of those things that I can, from that perspective, can share with students. Like, don't use it as an excuse. Like, if you've got you've got one parent at home, and in my case, I had a mother who was no nonsense, in no way. Everything was, your grades are up or you don't play sports. It was that simple, right? And held us accountable for everything we did and taught us some of those things that I think helped me and my brothers as we got older. But I'm saying that because not all kids have that. Now, there are a ton of single parents, students at our school, who are being raised by a single mom or a single dad. And their parents are, if something happens that their kid's getting in trouble, they're up there at that school to support us because they don't want their kid to come to school. So what I'm saying is that I think that I talk to kids all the time when I have an opportunity about, whatever your home structure is, don't let that derail what you want to do. We can support you and we can help you, because sometimes they don't have a supportive parent at home. So that's where the school steps in. That's where teachers step in to try to help them. So it's really one of those things where I try not to, I don't want students to use that as an excuse. That because I only have one, I live with my mom, or I live with my dad, or I live with my brother, that's going to keep me from getting to where I want to go in life. It's going to be hard for you, but I don't want them to use it as an excuse of why they can't do something, is because I have a single mom at home.
Right. Well, that's incredible, actually. I had no idea that was the way that you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, that's a success story, but
Absolutely.
You don't want it to come off as I beat the odds, although literally you did overcome the odds, because single motherhood's actually the single biggest predictor. If you look at a vast swath of people and you want to have your best guess at who's going to grow up and live a life of poverty, you look at how many are being raised by single moms. And she's doing the work of of mother and a father.
Absolutely.
You look at kids that are raised by one parent, actually by a single mother, rates of diagnosis of ADD go through the roof. It's because they're lacking like half of that structure that like enforce. A lot of times it's usually the dad. It's like, do your homework, plain and simple, get that done.
Right.
It's incredible that your mom did both, and she did them well, because you're doing very well for yourself.
She was the get your homework done, and for me it was sports. I loved playing sports when I was growing up, and it's like you either keep your grades up or you don't play, and so yeah, she was an integral part for me and my two brothers to get to where we're at in life right now. And she played that role of the disciplinarian. She had to be loving. She had to provide for us.
Wow.
You know, my friends used to come to our house and eat at our house and hang out. And, you know, it's just, she made sure that we had things, and it wasn't a bunch of material things, but I lived that. I grew up with a single mom. So if I know there's a kid that's struggling with some things, I feel like that's an area that I can relate to kids, because I've lived through that for sure. And I've been very fortunate to be where I'm at. But it started with a pretty solid structure at home as well. So that's important. If
Right.
more students have that, I think the better chances they have.
And you talk about relationships. You growing up in that way, that probably has to help you a ton in relating with kids that either complain or just simply grow up in a similar circumstance, right? It's like, hey, look, not an excuse.
Yeah.
I grew up exactly like you did.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You have to take a level of personal responsibility, right?
Yeah. Well, that's, whether it was my upbringing, whether it was my path to get through college, which wasn't easy. I think people assume that because I'm a principal that I've had this easy path to get to where I'm at. It has not been easy. And there's been some bumps in the road. That's kind of how life is. And so, I try to use my own shortcomings, my own stories, my own experiences I've had to try to help kids and even help some adults at times if I can, to continue to move forward, which is not always an easy thing to do.
Right. Every difficulty that you face and overcome is just wisdom in the bank.
Absolutely.
And that you're going to use to help other people.
Absolutely.
Can I ask what maybe was one of the bumps along your journey to becoming principal? Because I love
college or in my teaching.
Whichever you think is more applicable that kids could learn from.
I'll tell you the biggest hurdle that I think I overcame was
We are brought to you by Fairbury Furniture. Fairbury Furniture is the area's favorite furniture store. Their selection is huge, their staff is helpful and friendly, and they have all of your favorite brands of mattresses, tables, chairs, recliners, couches, and basically all furniture items. So make your home comfy, stylish, and delightful when you shop at Fairbury's own Fairbury Furniture.
I'll tell you the biggest hurdle that I think I overcame was when I got to Eastern, I wasn't a very strong student. And I say that because for the first time, I was away from my mom. So I didn't have her saying, hey, Timmy is what you call me, get up, it's time to go to school. Mm-hmm. So I didn't take school very serious when I was at Eastern. Initially, I didn't. And then changing my major. I mean, I was literally 3 semesters away from graduating with an econ degree and pretty much started over. So what happened was, I was at school another 2 years. So I was at Eastern 6 years. Which is like people used to be like, man, you're still in school. And they'd come back for homecoming. Tim, you're still here, kind of thing. But so overcoming that and keeping focused on what the outcome was I wanted to be, that's probably the biggest bump that I think that one of the biggest hurdles I really had to overcome, because there were times I questioned, am I doing the right thing, man? Like, I'm still at school. Am I going to get a job when I graduate? What's going to happen, and I had to, at that point, my scholarship was over. So I was getting financial aid and, trying to pay for school that way. And there were times I doubted if I was making the right decision. And I remember my first student teaching experience made me think, okay, I made the right decision. And then the first job fair I went to at Eastern, I had 3 job offers when I walked out of there. And that solidified, okay, now you made the right decision. But that was absolutely probably one of the toughest things that I had to kind of overcome, was just that whole idea of changing my major late in my career, my college career, and basically starting over as a student. Was tough to overcome.
So you definitely you were questioning yourself if you made the right decision. Absolutely. All the time in college.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite quotes is from Steve Jobs, the CEO, owner, founder of Apple. Mm-hmm. He said at his Stanford commencement speech something that I just love, and it's pertaining to pursuing a career path. You have to trust that the dots are going to connect. You can't see how they connect looking forward. You can only see how they connected looking backwards. Mm-hmm. So you have to do the right things and trust that the dots will connect Absolutely. Down the road. And I tell you what, if you work hard and you do the right things, the morally right things, just work hard, they probably will connect.
And that's what I try to instill in my two kids, young men now. They're not kids, but it's just that whole thing. Their path hasn't been super easy. People think because your dad's a principal at the high school that it's an easy it's an easy path for them. It absolutely was not easy for either one of my boys when they went to Bloomington High School. So those are things that I try to teach them as they go on, as they get older in life, to just, don't give up. And, you're going to have things not going to go your way. And then how do you respond to that is really important.
Oh, yeah. Hugely important. Yeah, because life will try to break you a lot of the time.
Absolutely will. Absolutely will.
So, what was I going to ask? Okay, so any high school that has multiple assistant principals, I came from a small school.
Okay.
You have 3 assistant principals. You guys have got to be pretty darn busy. So I want to ask, what actually occupies most of your time? How do you spend your day as a principal at BHS?
Well, it depends on. Now it's literally been, and it's not fair to use these last couple of years as a barometer or as an example. But right now, I literally have spent the beginning of this year dealing with COVID situations, where there's close contacts and that kind of stuff. But typically, in a typical year, I spend a lot of time, whether it's responding to emails, responding to phone calls, whether it's with parents, people from the community, working with teachers. I've got obviously a administrative team that I've got to supervise and help them. So I spend a lot of time working with people, and that's what I like about my job, is that it's all about that connection with people and being able to, because I feel like if there's a parent that's upset, there's a teacher that's upset, I feel like I can work with them and work through whatever the situation is, so we get to a better place. And that's part of my job I really like. I don't like dealing with some of the issues we have to deal with, but I do think that opportunity to connect with people. So this job allows me to do that. So I spend a lot of time interacting with people, and a lot of times putting out fires. I mean, when something happens, people, I'm the first someone to call and say, "Hey, Tim, hey, Mr. Moore, this is going on. What do we want? What do we do?" And so a typical day there's no typical day. That's kind of part of the reason I love what I do, because every single day is different. But it's just a lot of time. I spend a lot of time working with people, and a lot of times trying to do things to improve the overall school.
Mm-hmm. One thing I have heard about you from a parent at BHS is that you are compassionate, you're kind, and you really build these relationships, but you are stern and even intimidating when you need to be. You talk about putting out fires. I feel like you're pretty effective maybe at doing that.
Man, it's funny you say that, this whole intimidation thing. I try not to be that way, but I've noticed that I'm not a small individual. And so sometimes I do have to think about how I approach people. That's for real. I mean, I think about whether it's a student, whether it's a parent. I'm very conscious of my space and not getting too close to people, because that can be intimidating.
Right.
So I just have, and then there's also the race part to that as well. There's, being a large black man, some people are naturally intimidated by that. Some people are naturally not sure how to respond to that. That's a legitimate thing that I have to think about. And again, I knowing that about myself, knowing who I am, I always try to be compassionate when I talk to people, even in tough situations. And so the last thing I want to be is intimidating to people. But I think some people naturally are. When they see me, they don't even know me. They sometimes have a certain perception of who I am, sometimes how I look. Then once they get to know me, like, oh man, he's not like that at all, kind of thing.
Right. Oh, very interesting. Yeah. Huh. Well, you seem to be very aware of these facts. I mean, yeah. You also seemed very understanding when you said that, I am a large black man, that might be intimidating to people. Is that just that kind of a matter of fact for you?
Well, I understand. I just think that's just, I don't know if it's fair to say that's how society is. But I think that's we live in this day and age where I think that people are more accepting of other races and other cultures. I do firmly believe that.
Oh yeah.
But absolutely, I have to be mindful of how I approach people. And sometimes it's probably more size than it is the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. But if I'm talking to a kid, and I've even had black kids say this to me, like if I get too close to them, hey man, back up, because that personal space. Right. So I've learned over time that I can talk to a kid without having to get real close to them. If I've got a good relationship with kids, and some kids I know, especially when my boys were in school, that I just knew from friends with them, I could talk to them a little different than I could other kids. But I'm very mindful of when I approach someone, being careful with that, because I don't want to, if they are fearful, if they are scared, I want to knock that barrier down right away, because I told our staff at the start of the year, man, I may look sometimes like I'm mad or, serious, and I'm not. I don't get mad very often. I told our staff, I ain't fighting anybody. Right. People think I have this mean perception, and I'm not. I mean, the way I carry myself sometimes, and I'm the total opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. Huh. Yeah, like I said, you seem very aware of all that
Absolutely.
stuff. So very
Absolutely.
interesting. And okay, I have not been involved. I haven't been directly involved in high school education or administration. But one thing I've learned, because I've talked to tons of teachers and principals even on this show, I've learned that in your line of work, parents can actually be very aggressive. And we're kind of getting towards the end of this conversation. Yeah. So I want to hit you with one of these, or this dicey question maybe. Okay. So parents can be really aggressive towards administration. Sometimes there's mama bears that are very adamant about letting you know that they are not approving of the way that maybe the teachers are teaching, the administration is administrating.
Right.
And I want to ask this just to show people that you are aware of what parents are thinking and saying right now. What is maybe one of the most highly contested issues that comes up maybe at student board meetings? One of the biggest challenges in parent-teacher relations that you are facing as Bloomington High School?
Yeah, well, if you're talking about our board meetings, so I don't go to those unless it's, quite honestly, if there's something pertaining directly to our school. Again, if you asked me this question 10 years ago, I probably would have answered it differently. I think now, and I've mentioned it a couple times, COVID has really, this last year and a half, has really made people, I think, act different than they normally would. And with good reason, because it's this pandemic, and there's different sides of people believe different sides of it. So I think that probably the biggest thing that we see is there's times when something happens in our school that parents have to get involved in. I really think they want to make sure that we're treating our kids fairly. They want to make sure that we are not being biased or racist, whatever, against their kids. So I spend a lot of time trying to work through that with families of all colors, of all backgrounds, because I do think there are times that parents do get really upset about something that's happened to their kid. And of course, the natural reaction, as I would with my kids, is be protective. And I totally understand that. So to answer your question, what's the hottest topic? I think COVID right now has been the hottest topic, obviously. I do think that, prior to that, there's people that are upset about, critical race theory and is that being taught? There's been parents that have challenged some of the things we're teaching in school. If you go back to, our school was closed in spring of 2020, but that's when this country was exploding with racial issues, man. And, I often wonder, like, what would our school have been like if we were open at that time? Because I don't know.
In disguise
I don't know what our kids. I think we could have worked through situations with our kids.
Oh, right.
But it would have been a pretty interesting situations to work through as this country was just exploding, and with different things, and then as a school, we're bringing all these kids into our school, and so it's just one of those things where I think that, again, parents to me I get what they're when they're upset, They're just there to protect their kid. That's all they want to make. They want to make sure we're treating their kid with respect and that they feel like they deserve. And sometimes it takes us a while to work through those things, but we work very hard to make sure that kids feel safe and feel welcomed, and the parents do as well.
Right. Again, your level of understanding and awareness is pretty darn good. That's probably what makes you such a good principal. And I have a lot of respect and compassion even for teachers and administrators in the high school setting, because basically every decision you make, you cannot please everyone. No. You're going to really upset nearly half of parents, and they will let you know. Right. And if you went ahead and made the other decision, you would make half of parents really mad, and they would let you know. It's so interesting, and it's a tough spot.
I've got a really easy process I go through with that, though. And I tell our staff, I'll tell parents this, we'll do anything to help kids. And the decisions we make are going to be kid friendly. They're going to, if it's something that's good for kids, we're in the business of helping kids. So if a decision, if it comes down to helping a kid or making the adults happy, then I'm sorry, the adults are not going to be happy, because we're going to do what's right for kids. And so I've always kind of kept that in the back of my mind, and because I think that's what's super important. Awesome.
And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up in just 1 second. Yeah. I just want to ask, what goals then do you have for the school, the high school, Bloomington High School, that you want to accomplish before you leave? Because you haven't been there too long, really. You're still a young man. So you have plenty of time. What kind of goals do you have?
Yeah. So I a couple things. I've been at BHS for 25 years. I've got about 7 years before I retire.
Okay. Well, Jesus.
Yeah, I'm getting close. I got a ways to go, but I'm getting close.
Well, you look fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I want, the next 7 years, if I were to stay at Bloomington High School, is to continue to make it a place that's accepting of everybody that walks in our door. It goes back to that relationship piece. It goes back to creating the school environment where kids feel valued, they feel welcomed, they want to be there. I've always said that, I've been pretty fortunate to be at two schools in my career. When I first started as principal, someone said, I remember at one of my first staff meetings, they said, hey, principals have kind of come and gone at Bloomington High School, right? There's been a lot of turnover. And why can we expect you to stick around? And I said, well, first of all, I want to be here when my kids graduate. That was a goal of mine for Griffin to graduate from Bloomington High School. My youngest son's at a prep school in Ohio, so he didn't get a chance to. But that was my goal, was to be here until they graduated. So I'm saying that because I want to make sure that in my last years at BHS that I'm able to continue to create this culture where kids feel valued, respected, and it's just an overall good school. And again, it may not come out in test scores. It may not come in, in the number of students and National Merit Scholar finalists and all those good things. But it's just a place when kids come to school, they have a great experience and they leave there and then they're like, man, look back and say, man, that's the best 4 years of my life. That's what I kind of want to continue to try to work towards for Bloomington High School as my career slowly winds down.
Well, man, awesome. The Bloomington High School is in good hands. The future is looking bright. You've done some great things. No one can deny that Bloomington High School is on the rise. It's just improving every single year. I don't know how COVID really, truly affected the high school, but it's still it's trending upwards. As I said, the future's in great hands. Tim Moore, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
I've enjoyed it as well, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yes, my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap, man.
All right, man.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of The Paul Garcia Show. If you enjoy this show and you want to support it, please consider donating a couple of bucks on Venmo to The Paul Garcia Show. Additionally, you can also support the show's production on patreon.com/Paul Garcia, where for as little as $1 a month, you'll gain early access to each and every episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to The Paul Garcia Show on YouTube, follow it on Instagram, like it on Facebook, and subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As always, thank you for tuning in to The Paul Garcia Show. God bless and have a great week.